Welcome friends to Thunder Ridge Homestead. It is 12 degrees outside today. Way too cold. So we're going to do some inside stuff. I'm going to get started on the subject of making soap. And the kind of soap I make, which is a cold process soap. Here's a bar of the soap I just got through making. And this is soap made from fat and lye. It can be a pretty complicated process, or it can be pretty simple. I think it's kind of scary to a lot of people because lye can burn you. Lye is similar to bleach in that way. Bleach is a very base product, which means that you can actually get an alkaline burn from it, and lye is the same way. So you have to take care of your skin and your eyes, especially when you're working with lye. Soap making has been around for eons, who knows how long, and it's just the combination of some source of fat with some source of lye. Back in the old days, it was a lot more complicated process because they made their lye from wood ashes and other sources, and the oils were anything from olive oil, which has been around for thousands of years also, to animal fats like lard. I do have a nice big tub of lard here. We buy our animals from a farmer and have them processed at a small family-owned butcher shop, and we get our lye sent to us in tubs. They've already got it all ready to go, perfect for cooking or for making soap, and I choose to make soap with a lot of my lard. Also, you're going to need, the ingredient is lye, and you're going to, oddly enough, buy lye. It's going to come something like this. And it's being sold as a drain cleaner or drain opener these days. The main thing to remember if you're going to get lye is you want to be sure it says 100% lye on the cover of it. And it's a crystal. And the reason you purchase it like this is because a lot of drain cleaners, modern drain cleaners, have metal shavings and other additives in it that will just, tear you up if you made soap out of it. So you want to be sure and get 100% lye. And those are really the ingredients that you need to make soap. The first and most important tool you're going to need is an accurate scale. Now, you can find soap recipes in several different books and things, and all of them are going to require accurate measurements. And I mean accurate. We're talking ounces to the second decimal. So, or in grams a lot of times. So you're going to need a very good scale that can either do grams or ounces, and that is going to be your most important tool when you're making soap. The next tool that you're going to need when you're making soap is a recipe of some sort. And there are a lot of places to come by recipes. I'm going to recommend two books. The first one is probably my favorite. For somebody who's just starting out for making soap, it's called The Complete Soap Maker. It is by Norma Coney, spelled C-O-N-E-Y. It is an excellent book. It has all kinds of information about how to make cold process soap, which is basically the lye and fat soap, from scratch. It tells you all kinds of things. And one of the most important things it has in it is a number of very good, very accurately measured recipes. So you can kind of make soap on your own. Another book I would recommend also is this one. It is called The Soap Maker's Companion. It is by Susan Miller Kavich, spelled C-A-V-I-T-C-H. This is an excellent book. Gives you a real in-depth view of making soap. As you can see, my copy's well worn. I've done a lot of reading of it over the years. And another thing that I would recommend is that you look online for a thing called a lye calculator. And a lot of places that sell soap maker supplies will have lye calculators where you can choose the kinds of fats and oils that you want to make your soap out of, and it will tell you accurate measurements and accurate amounts of lye to make the soap the way you desire. When you get those calculations, I like to start something like this, which is a soap recipe diary. I've been saving the recipes, making notes on that, and that kind of gives me a little guide for the next time. I've been making cold processed soap for probably about 12 to 15 years. A soap kettle, and I like to have a deep kettle. I like to have a stainless steel kettle. Doesn't have to be real heavy duty or anything else. I got this one at a discount store called Big Lots, so just a real simple little stainless steel kettle, but it's perfect for my soap making. An immersion blender comes with a stick like that, and it will come with a power source. And what an immersion blender will do for you is take a lot of time off of your soap process, because you need to thoroughly combine the fat with the lye in order to make it do the chemical process properly. Put our soap pot up here too. Stick the immersion blender in there. Another tool that you'll really need is a container to mix your lye and water in. I really like this one. This is a Rubbermaid 2-quart container, and the reason I like it is because you need a good, sturdy, solid container that can get hot. When you combine lye with water, it does a chemical reaction and it will go over 220 degrees quickly. So in addition to being chemically burnt, you can be physically burnt, especially if your container to mix the lye and water is going to melt on you. So I like this picture very well. It has a lid that I can put on it. The lid will help it to not spill or splash after it's combined, because after you combine the lye and water, you're going to have to allow it to cool. As you notice, I have this one labeled poison. The only thing I use this for is soap. That is it. I also have a thermometer, and a thermometer is extremely important in cold process soap making, because you need to be able to have the fat and the lye solution at the same temperature when you combine them. The temperature you choose to do that at depends on the process you're using and the recipe you're using and how you need it to combine. You need to be sure and have a thermometer that will go to at least 220 degrees. So this is a very good thermometer for that purpose. Safety equipment for soap making. You want to be sure and have a well ventilated area, because when you mix up the lye and the water, vapors come off of it, and I have asthma, so I have to be sure and do that in a ventilated area. The next things you need for making your soap are items of personal safety, the most important of which is going to be some safety glasses. Splash lye in your eyes and it'll be all she wrote. It's a very dangerous thing to happen. You will burn your eyeball. So that is not something you want to do. The next thing you need are a pair of good gloves, rubber gloves, long ones if possible, and you want them that are not chemically reactive. So you want a good quality glove. You also want to be sure and wear long sleeves and long pants and shoes, etc. You want to work in an area where there are no pets or children nearby, or at a time when you have time that you can work without having a lot of disruptions. Another thing I like to have is a towel on hand. I'll show you the reason for the toweling later. And you also want to have a bottle of vinegar on hand and some toweling to go along with that. If you do splash lye on yourself, since it is a base, you can neutralize it with vinegar. It will stop the burning. So the solution to a splash is put vinegar on, rinse it with vinegar really well, flush it, and then we're going to rinse it as well as possible and let cold water run over it until it's completely cleaned off. And you're going to use soap and water and just clean up thoroughly. You also want an area, besides, like I said, no pets, no children, you want an area that's stable and easy to work with. I like to use my kitchen sink. I have a big commercial kitchen sink. I think you've seen it before, and it gives me a good place to do my soap making. The process of making soap, cold process soap, is a chemical reaction. You are basically going to combine your fat source, which, like I said here, I'm just going to use by demonstrating some olive oil, with lye. And the lye will have a chemical heat to it, so that is the only heat involved, is a chemical heat from the lye. And you also will need to add a little bit of heat to bring your oil up to temperature, so it's the same temperature as the lye when you combine them. So truly called cold process, there is a little heat involved, but you're not cooking the soap. So that's the difference between a cold process soap and a hot process soap. Fat and oil are acidic. The lye is a base. When the two combine chemically, they create a chemical change which results in the product of a salt. This is going to be actually creating the soap itself. Soap itself is chemically considered a salt, even though it's not the salt like you would eat. That's the chemical name for what it is. It's a salt. The best way I can explain what happens is by using the illustration of a cake mix. When you take the flour and sugar and dry ingredients and you combine them with the eggs and milk of the wet ingredients, once you put the eggs and water in with the flour and sugar and you stir, you have a mixture. When heat is involved, the mixture will turn into a cake. A cake would be like the end result of the salt. That's about the best way I can explain it. And even that's pretty confusing, I realize. Melt and pour soaps, which you hear of quite a bit. The soap is already soap. You're just doing different things with it. When people use melt and pour soaps that you hear often, that's kind of like if you would take a sheet cake and cut it out and take the parts and stir it up together with some other thing, and you would turn the cake into, say, truffle, for example. That's kind of what a melt and pour soap is like. You're taking some soap that already exists, like the cake already exists, and you're mixing it with other ingredients to make it fancier and better and, you know, more, maybe more perfume, more color, more whatever. That's what a melt and pour soap is. Once you have your soap mixed and created, you will need some sort of molds to put it in. And when I am making cold processed soap, the molds are considerably different than they are for melt and pour. A melt and pour soap, you'll often see little molds like this. And these little molds are plastic. They make like little individual bars of soap, and they're really cute. And I know a lot of people will find these little molds and they'll say, oh, we're gonna make soap, and they're so excited. These are a little bit bigger molds, and you know, you could make standard soap and use these molds, but truthfully it's very, very inefficient, and it really won't end up as good a soap as you want it to be. When you are getting ready to make cold processed soap, you need basically bulk molds. And one of the kinds I have here is a silicone loaf pan. Okay, and I have an old heavy-duty Tupperware container that works really, really well as a soap mold for your cold processed soaps. You can also get fancy and use some other kinds of molds, and personally this is one of my favorites. This is, and you can see it's well used, this is a chunk of heavy-duty PVC pipe, and I think it's a 3-inch pipe, and you get them cut in some sections like that, and then the thing you're trying to look for to make this be a mold is something like this. And what this is, if you're doing regular plumbing, this is called a test lid, and if they pressure test molds, these lids go on and then they can be held in place, and they can test with air pressure to make sure that the pipes aren't leaking in a regular house. But with soap making, that's about a perfect lid for your soap mold. And then once you have your soap made, you can put it, just pour it in there and allow it to set up and form. And when it pops out, you have a loaf that you can then cut into nice cute little round bars of soap. So that works really, really well for soap mold. You also need one more thing, and that is, I like to use some sort of an insulated box. This is a really cool one. I actually got that in my doctor's office, of all the weird places. Doctor's offices receive these styrofoam boxes because they get medications and like vaccines and things like that shipped in them. And ask, they'll save those for you, and they're just pretty cool. This is a small one. They actually had a larger size available as well at my doctor's office. And what they're for is, after you make a cold processed soap and you pour it into the molds, you want to keep it as warm as possible for as long as possible, and that allows the chemical processes to continue longer, and it makes a milder soap and a better soap. So you're going to want a place that you can put your soap after it's in the mold that will work really well for keeping it warm. Now, how I've been doing my soap is I have, you can see a towel in there like that, just kind of squished in there. I basically stand my soap molds down inside of it like that. I have the toweling in the center to hold them up steady. I will put the lid on top. Ideally I would have a second box to just invert over the top of this, but I will put another towel or blanket or something around here to help keep it warm as long as possible, and that works really well. So like I said, a second box is on my list of things to get, but you'll want some way to keep your soap molds insulated and warm as long as possible. That is some of the stuff that you're going to need if you're going to do some cold processed soap. I'm going to start showing you a couple of recipes, and I'm going to make that into a separate video. So I hope you guys can come along with me and learn a little bit. You just need to have a little bit of practice and a little bit of time and a good recipe and Pay attention to what you're doing, and you can do it. It's not impossible. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So, signing off for now. Thanks for watching.